So why do we dump Trub? Why do we go through this hassle, if you think that it's a hassle? Maybe you want to harvest your yeast. You want to separate the good yeast from the bad yeast. That's one benefit. I think if you can dump your yeast, you basically have a unit tank, right? So you have a fermenter, and then you have a bright tank, and then especially if you have a carb stone or something like that, you can get all the matter out of there and just have beer, and then you can go ahead and carbonate it. You can serve out of that tank if you wanted to. Anytime that there's dead yeast at the bottom of your fermenter, that's not really the best thing in the world. I mean, in my experience, 2-3 weeks, that's not a big deal, but if you're going any longer than that, you definitely want to get that stuff out of there. And then probably the biggest and most obvious reason is clarity of your beer. I mean, if you dry hop with like 6 ounces of hops and then you rack that into your keg, you're gonna have hops and stuff in your finished beer, unless you're cold crashing and stuff like that. So those are some benefits. They might not be all, but now that we've established why we would do something like this, let's look at how I go about doing this. All right, let's take a look at our Conical here. Did some dry hopping a couple days ago, so I want to remove that hop material. So I got my blue bucket that I got from the dollar store, which is really nice because it has a little notch in there and fits right underneath the valve. So we don't want any sanitizer sucked back, so we're going to take the blow-off tube out of the sanitizer, and we're going to slowly crack this baby open here. You see some sludge and some yeast. I'm just looking to get that solid material out of there. When it starts shooting out liquid, I'm pretty much good with that. So ain't losing too much right there. Just that's one little purge of hop material. And then after, especially if you're going to be collecting yeast from there or something, you're just going to want to clean that, spray it down with some sanitizer, make sure that everything's sanitary for the next time. So dumping your Trub and yeast isn't the hardest thing in the world. You just want to make sure that you're clean. But maybe the best question is when should you be dumping your yeast and Trub? And I probably get into this a little bit better on the harvesting yeast from a Conical video. But what I like to do is 24 hours after pitching my yeast, I like to get all the proteins and maybe the dead on arrival yeast, get that out of there. I don't want that in my ferment. I don't need any of that in there. And then it depends on if you're trying to harvest that yeast. So I might come and maybe there's some more proteins and stuff left over. So maybe like day 3, maybe I'm gonna do another dump, and then that should be my last one. And then my next one should be like harvesting yeast. So maybe like day 5. Dump into your mason jar, and that'll be the stuff that you want to keep. And then anytime that you dry hop, you probably want to get as much yeast out of the fermenter as you can. You don't want those really interacting, despite the New England IPA style. In my opinion, you want the yeast gone before you dry hop. And then one last thing I'd like to add is that like the Spike Conical has a big 2-inch dump valve on the bottom there. That's great. That really does help out. But if you pitch your yeast and then just walk away for 2 weeks, it's still going to clog, especially if you're dry hopping. I mean, you got to get some of that material out of there. I mean, let's not be unrealistic of our expectations of our equipment. We got to help it out a little bit. So yeah, so that's video 1 of my kind of overlook of the Spike Conical. So thanks for watching.